Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
My name's Joe Giordano, Director of Booking at BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Welcome, one and all, to a brand new episode of Promoter 101. This week, Steiny's in beautiful Beverly Hills at the one and only Billboard Live Music Summit, joined by special guest hosts Jeff White and Ant Taylor, here to bring you the most badass podcast in the known universe. Buckle up and have some fun. It's Promoter 101.
Hey friends, it's Promoter 101 and we're live coming to you from the Billboard Touring Conference. Call this show episode 109 if you're counting at home. I'm Dan Steinberg and joined by a very special guest from Eventbrite, not Ticketfly, I guess, Jeff White, and from Lyte, Lyte, Mr. Ant Taylor. Thanks for being here, guys.
Great to be here, Dan. We'll have the godfather of ticketing, the one and only Fred Rosen, will be here breaking down how he built Ticketmaster into a household name.
Plus, John Pantle talks to us just days before he left his post at APA.
And a war story from Goldenvoices, Susan Rosenbluth.
And news of the week with Works Entertainment, Luke Pierce.
It's John Finberg from First Row Talent, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Wednesday, January 30, 2019, the Promoter 101 podcast will make its first visit to the city of brotherly love. That's right, Philly. Get the whiz ready, because here we come.
We'll be on campus at the University of Arts at the Kaplan Recital Hall in Philadelphia, PA. We're going to bring the podcast live to record with our very special guest, Live Nation's own Jeff Gordon.
Admission is free thanks to our friends at the University of Arts. Doors open at 6:30 and the show starts right at 7.
You can listen to the Promoter 101 podcast pretty much anywhere.
That's right. Find us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Music, and currently Beverly Hills.
Follow us on Twitter. Luke's at Luke Pierce, Dan's at The Jew, and the show at Promoter 101. Ant is at Ant Taylor, and I am not on Twitter.
You can also submit any ideas to us by emailing us at steiny@promoter101.net.
This is Rick Farrell with ICM Partners, coming to you from Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week, we feature a classic reissue of episode 65. Tell them about that, Jeff.
Features CID Entertainment Dan Berkowitz talking about the enhanced experience.
Plus, agent JJ Cassieri joins us to talk about their agency growth.
Indianapolis Rhythm and Blues concert promoter Gino Sheldon gives us a lesson on working hard to make it happen for yourself.
Plus 3 questions with Point Entertainment's Jesse Lundy.
And don't forget to drop us a review. Subscribe to the Promoter 101 podcast. It's free, and we badly need your approval. So sign up wherever you podcast.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson.
Kevin Lyman.
Joan Giddings.
Jim Runge.
Jeff White.
Brian Zisk.
Chuck Randall.
Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould. Gary Smith. Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
News of the week.
It's time for News of the Week. Country music's biggest night went down last night in Nashville as the 51st CMA Awards were set at Bridgestone Arena. And taking home some hardware last night, Keith Urban winning the night's biggest honor for Entertainer of the Year. Chris Stapleton took home Single and Song for Broken Halos, as well as Male Vocalist. And Carrie Underwood took home the Female Vocalist honor. Casey Musgraves breaking the mold, winning Best Album of the Year for Golden Hour. And in other news, I probably had 15 vodka sodas last night and fell in my front yard. Vivendi took one more step towards the sale of the Universal Music Group last week, announcing they've selected 15 banks to consider in the search for the sale as much as half of UMG. They're waiting for the 2018 financial results to post, which will be out in February 2019, before starting more in-depth discussions with potential suitors. Fires rage on in Malibu as the Woolsey Fire in Los Angeles and Ventura counties, as well as the Hill Fire in Ventura County and the Camp Fire in Butte County, roll through California. More than 400 homes have been burned to the ground, including the homes of Neil Young, Robin Thicke, Gerard Butler, and Miley Cyrus and Chris Hemsworth. Cyrus and Hemsworth have donated $500,000 to the Malibu Foundation through Cyrus's charity, Happy Hippie, and we'll include a link to the foundation in the show notes. And a sad moment today, as we're recording this podcast on Thursday, Roy Clark, the celebrated multi-instrumentalist who brought country music into the millions of American homes via his TV show Hee Haw, died on Thursday at his home in Tulsa due to complications of pneumonia. As a super picker, Clark was one of the first artists to cross over to pop and was one of the first artists to plant a flag in Branson, Missouri as a live music destination. Clark was 85. That'll do it for News of the Week.
Hi, this is Jamie Kelsel, an agent at APA in Los Angeles, and I am on Promoter 101.
It's everyone's favorite time, the announcement of Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
This week, we are excited to announce the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week is the man behind Coachella and Goldenvoice, the living legend himself, the man, the myth, the icon, Paul T. That's right, Paul Tillett, covering his own path in the business, making him Promoter 101's own Badass of the Week.
Congrats, Paul T.
This is John Giddings, and I'm on Promoter 101.
So in our feature interview this week, we'll have the godfather of ticketing himself. The one and only Fred Rosen will be with us breaking down how he built Ticketmaster into a household name.
We're hanging out in Los Angeles with an icon from the ticketing world, Fred Rosen. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. I have to go find an icon, though.
For those of you that don't know, Ticketmaster became a behemoth when there was 19 or 20 different ticketing companies. Fred was at the helm and made them the dominant ticketing company. Really, the shape of that business was built under your tutelage.
Well, thank you. It took a period of time. I became CEO in fall of 82. And over the next 10 years, we became the leading ticket company in the world.
Ticketron, Datatix, Teleseat, Bass. There were so many different ticketing companies.
Some ticks, few ticks, couple of ticks. But most of the ticket companies in those days, in almost every state, there was one. When I got in the business, Ticketron was the biggest, had the biggest name, operated cross country, basically lived on allocations, had a few exclusive contracts. And states like Minnesota, Arizona, Michigan basically had one dominant leading ticket company and then some kind of marginal second ticket company. But there was no really national network, and there was nobody that really understood the business of what ticketing was.
And for a good part of it, a lot of the industry was still shoeboxes at record stores with pre-printed tickets.
Well, no. In the early 80s, yes. By the mid-80s, most people were using computers and were getting out of the shoebox area. There were some big venues that were not arenas. Arenas, for the most part, were using computers because it was a good inventory control system, and they had better ability to control the money that went through the systems. The fact of the matter is that computerized ticketing and computerizing the box office is really an inventory control system. It's accounting. It's understanding where you stand on a show. Hard tickets are manual, and this became all automated. And I also, to a certain extent, cleaned up the industry. The industry was very fragmented. There were a lot of issues about audits. There were a lot of issues about how many tickets were really sold. And we fixed a lot of that. We came with an understanding that this was a business and needed to be treated like a business.
The technology was expensive and challenging at the time. Internet didn't exist yet. You guys had to have dedicated phone lines at your outlets. And because the internet didn't exist yet, people couldn't buy tickets at home unless they were ordering over the phone. So you had to have computer banks and call centers, and you had to have chains of outlets that had dedicated phone lines, right?
We had about 2,500 to 3,000 outlets when this was finished, mostly in record stores, which are hard to come by today, some in department stores. We wound up with about 2,500 operators outside of New York. In 83, when I came to L.A., nobody even understood what phone rooms were. It started to evolve in the mid-90s when we started doing ticketing online. You'd go to a box office in the Midwest, or you'd go to an arena in the Midwest, and you'd say, does anybody buy tickets by phone? And they'd go, no. And I go, do you have a phone room? And they'd go, yes. And they take you into a room that had a black phone with 2 lines. Well, obviously, you can't sell tickets by phone if you have 2 lines. So part of the evolution was the minute we took over an arena, when a show went on sale, you had 50 to 75 operators taking orders. So the net effect is it went from 5% of their business to 30 or 35% of their business.
Because 10 o'clock when the show went on sale, you needed more than 2 people to answer the phone. So
Exactly.
they just get a busy signal.
You couldn't get through. It was remarkable to me to a certain extent in the mid 80s. You know, I guess like everything else, it was an evolution of a business. People never saw ticketing as a business. I heard people say to me in the early 80s, ticketing's not a business and you can't make money at $1 a ticket. And they were right. You can't make money at $1 a ticket. And I changed that.
Well, the industry, as we all know, is pretty much hides behind the ticketing. That's really the balls of the entire industry of where all the profits made is F&B and ticketing.
It took 10 years for people to understand that the arenas and the clients were sharing in the revenue. What I couldn't understand was this. I could not understand why everything was $1. I couldn't understand why. I was at a meeting in Texas, and we were talking about the Houston Rockets. And I said, why is there $1 service charge on a $40 ticket? And they said, because we have $5 tickets. And I said, but the guy who buys the $5 ticket doesn't care what the $40 ticket pays. So why can't you have multiple service charges on the same event? And they said to me, because you can't. And I go, where is that written?
That was the answer? Because you can't?
Because you can't. I think my answer was that one of the tablets Moses dropped. The fact of the matter is that in the perspective of what I saw was that if you were going to be in the ticket business, you had to have total control in the sense of you couldn't have partners. And one of the things that I had is I had a great financial partner whose name was Jay Pritzker. And Jay left me alone to a great extent. And I made the decisions and I ran the business. And so when you sat with a building and you said, look, we're going to have multiple service charges, we're going to have them evolve, you know, you could sit in a room and say, okay, look, here's how it is. It's going to go up, but you get a piece of this. And that kind of changed the dynamic. And the fact is, if you really think about it and you go back to the early 80s, 70 to 75% of all tickets were sold at the box office. People would camp out and spend 2 or 3 days. And my view was nobody pays more for a ticket than they want. I knew that in the early 80s, and it still applies today. And service charges went up. Ticketmaster took the heat for the industry. I had broad shoulders, and as long as I had contracts, I was willing to do that. And then after a period of time, people started to figure out that the arenas shared in ticketing the same way they share in parking, the same way they share in food service, the same way they share in merchandise, the same way they share in everything that goes in an arena. And basically all I did was bring ticketing into the 20th century.
So Ticketmaster is, without question, the dominant brand in ticketing.
Right.
When you look back at the child you created, what's your vision of Ticketmaster now? What's your thoughts?
Look, when you sell a company after you build it, it's like a bird that leaves the nest. You know, it's gone. I think they've done a good job in continuing to grow. What's interesting to me is the model I created 30 years ago still exists. I get mine, you get yours, and that hasn't changed. Ticketing in today's world is like prohibition. Prohibition didn't work because people couldn't regulate themselves. You'll never control scalping. You'll never control the secondary market because if somebody has something that somebody else wants to pay for, you're dealing with basically a limited inventory. How many people can sit in the first 10 rows? How many people can sit in the first row? There are always people who don't focus on things until the last minute, and they're willing to pay for whatever it costs. I think the 7th game of the Warriors and the Cavaliers 2 years ago, a pair of tickets on the floor went for $140,000. $140,000 for 2 tickets. And my view was this. If they could afford it, God bless them. You know, if that's what they wanted, that's what they were worth.
The idea of paying what the market will bear has always been an industry problem.
Well, the industry, we used to sit in the rooms and you'd price tickets at $18 or $20 or $25. And then what would happen was market forces would take place. And you could scramble the rows, but somehow brokers knew that if somebody got a pair of tickets or 4 tickets at, let's say, $30, including the service charge, so it's $120, those tickets were worth anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Most people can't say no to that. And then when I left Ticketmaster, here's what happened. It was very interesting to me. The public's responsible for everything that happened, not the ticketing companies, the public. And I'll tell you how I see that. After I left, Ticketmaster allowed the groups to take 10% for their fan club. And so Mary Jane in Iowa got 4 tickets, and she recognized she got 4 really good tickets, and she recognized she could sell 2 and pay for 4. Then she recognized because of StubHub, she could pay 4 and pay her rent and sit where she always sat, which is in the middle, and complain about service charges. So there is a reality that says the public brought all of this on themselves. And then as computers came and as the internet came and as stealing music came, it's physics. You took the money out of the artist's pocket. We used to be 85 or 90% of their revenue came from recorded music, and that got stolen. So then you just kind of moved it physically. The factors moved pricing to go up. It's physics. You know, it's a push and pull. And the net effect is the public brought it on itself. And I learned in my experience with the Pearl Jam situation, which was all over $2 a ticket, which when you think about it is pretty absurd. We won that battle. But the fact is there never should have been a battle. It was absurd about the whole process. And what you see now is sort of the free market work. I saw one band that was charging $350 a ticket and said, look, if you want to see me, that's what it is. The monopoly of the bands. Every band is a monopoly. Every artist is a monopoly because they control what they have. I mean, I saw Bruce Springsteen on Broadway, and I think I paid $750 a ticket, which was fine if I wanted to go see it. I remember when he did 5 shows at the Sports Arena, it was $18 a ticket. He doesn't seem to have any problems selling out, so therefore it's worth that. You just have to put this all in perspective. Artists understand the value. The Stones in the Steel Wheels tour understood that everything went in a bundle. Michael Cole was really smart, first guy to figure that out, with a guy named Joe Raskoff. Put everything in the pot. Ticket pricing, service charges, merchandise, whatever was included went into the pot that they split with the band. And the world changed. I'm always fascinated that this kind of bubbles up every 5 years and you get a new list of people who want to either regulate it or do something. It's never going to be regulated.
Seems like Jared Smith and Michael Rapino have done an amazing job making new technology steps forward that keep as much of that money inside the deal instead of going to the scalpers. That they've really focused, since they put the two companies into the same basket, that there's reasons to want to keep that focus with ticket flexing and the ability to do the verified fans and all of the VIP, that a lot of that stuff, even though there'll always be a secondary, a lot more of that money staying in the pot.
Well, it stays in the pot because they can play in the secondary market too, which they couldn't do before. You know, the primary market was the principal value of being in the ticket business. When you look at all the companies in the secondary market, I'll bet you the secondary market today is greater than the primary market in terms of dollars.
There's a new moment in ticketing and things have changed a lot. You sold the company in 1 year?
I sold the company in 93 and then we wound up doing it again in 97, and that's when I left. I'm gone longer than I was there. I find it fascinating that anybody still remembers my name.
You have a very big impact on our industry, sir.
Yeah, but like everything else, you know, when you live in LA, everything's disposable.
But you had a global company.
Yeah, but you know, like anything else, if you go on Ticketmaster's website, you don't even find my name. So, you know, you got to just recognize that you had a moment, the moment was great, and the moment passes. You know, I don't carry that, and I get calls. I'd say I used to get 3 or 4 calls a month about ticketing, and I just tell them I have a non-compete till 2188. I'm done with all that. I watch everybody in the process now, and people are fighting the same battles. Whose ticket is it? How much is it? Is it too much? Should we have an investigation? How many tickets went on sale to the public? Who's holding tickets? Who's doing that? It's the same fights from 25 years ago, from 30 years ago.
Can you go back to, you sold the company twice? How did that work?
In 93, we sold 80% of the company to Paul Allen, and I was going to leave. And Paul, we wound up entering into a 5-year employment contract, which was the first employment contract I've had in my life. And then when we went public and Paul sold his interest to Diller, and then Diller at IAC, he had about 40% of the company and came for the rest. And when we became a division of IAC, I didn't want to stay. And I left.
So you sold the last 20% at that point?
I didn't sell it. I kept it because it all got converted into options and stock into a public company, and I sold it over the next 5 or 6 years. But the point was, for me, after you do something for 16 years, you get tired of it. You know, you're always the toughest guy. You're always walking in a room, and to a certain extent, it stopped being fun. And Barry's very smart and clever, and he had his vision for what he wanted to do with the company, and he wanted me to stay, but I didn't want to.
You talk about being the toughest guy in the room, and we were talking about this earlier this week. My first encounter of you was being at a conference at CIC back before Polestar Live changed the name. You walking into the room, grabbing a mic and taking one on one of the biggest promoters in the world.
Yeah, you kind of reminded me of that. I had forgotten all about that.
You remember the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember the story. It was, you know, somebody was up there bad-mouthing ticketing company and letting us have control. And I walked in and I said something along the lines of, you guys kill me, man. When you need money, you call me. When you want someone to shield you, you call me. And then you stand up here and throw all this crap in front of people. I wasn't going to take it. I mean, that's the truth of it. We were the buffer. We were the buffer. And what no one could figure out was, which I always got a kick out of, I learned about this business in some levels by accident. There was a building manager who I called, because I used to call my clients every couple weeks. and speak to them if they didn't call me. You kept your top 50 clients close. And in the 16 years I ran the company, I never lost a major client. I mean, so you got to take that for what that is. And so I said, what's the matter? And he said, I got to go see the mayor. I just gave up the rent to do an act, to get this act, because we were competing. And I went, how much do you need? And he told me, and I said, I'll give it to you. And he said, how are you going to give it to me? And I said, well, I'm going to raise the service charges by, I don't know, $3 a ticket. And the way it'll work is I'll give you that money and I'll keep the spread. And he said, fabulous. And then some reporter in the music business called him and said, how come the service charges went up? And he said, I don't know. I got to keep an eye on those guys on the West Coast. And so what you'd find is people would go, how come the service charges went up? I don't know. You got to keep an eye on that guy in California. I got to talk to him. But it was air cover. I was air cover for everybody. And I put the industry on my shoulders. Look, you read the stuff and did it bother you? Yeah. But people didn't want to understand fundamentally what a ticket company was. If a plane lands, the back third of coach lands at the same time as first class does. But when you sell a ticket and you're putting people in the last third of the house and the last 20 rows, of course they're going to hate you. There's no way to make it nice. You're sitting in a place where your friends are sitting in front of you or you paid a lot of money. But the point is this, you have a choice not to go. And the emotion of sitting in the box, the arena, not a suite, but in the box, is more important that you pay the money to sit in the last row and be there. Otherwise, why would anybody go to a show? And that emotion is what sells tickets. It sells tickets because you want to be and you want to have that group interaction. And you want to be in that building when something's happening. Or you go to a ball game. It's on television. It's free. And yet you got to be there. Or you go sit in the stands in a football game with no shirt and it's 6 degrees. There are emotional connections to live events. People forget that. And human beings are tribal. You want to share experiences with other people.
Let's go back a little bit. We were talking about there were other ticketing companies, and besides that, you guys weren't the biggest. How did that happen? How did you guys wind up coming out ahead while you were running the company?
When I found Ticketmaster, had 25 people, was losing about $2 million a year, and we had a foothold in Chicago because I had signed a deal with the White Sox. And somebody told me that the US Festival was coming to L.A., and that we could do the tickets, but they didn't want computers. They wanted hard tickets. It was the Steve Wozniak Festival. So because I had some relationships in Chicago, I came out here and put together a hard ticket outlet network, which was Music Plus and Sport Mart. And I think it was like 50 outlets. And then we set up a phone room with 50 people and we opened April 1st in LA, 1983. We found a place in Mid-Wilshire in Koreatown where a company had a data center. Today, everything lives in the cloud, but you need a data center in those days. And we signed 2 leases, one for 6 months and one for 5 years. We didn't know if it would work. And in the first 6 months, we wound up signing the Forum and Avalon, which was the big concert promoter. And
Brian Murphy.
Yeah, it was Brian, but it was Terry Bassett and Bob Geddes. And Brian was there. And I became friendly with all those guys. Brian passed, Terry passed. I said to myself, well, I better learn the business. And so took the next year to learn the business, learn where all the money was, learn where all the dollars were. Did every job in the company, worked 16-hour days. And then we had an opportunity to buy a ticket company called Ticket World. It was in Detroit and New York. And we bought that company, and it was losing like about $400,000 a month.
So almost $5 million a year they were losing when you bought them?
Yeah. But we had just gotten the Meadowlands as a client. And between that, Radio City, I didn't have the Garden. I had Nassau Coliseum and I had the Yankees, I think. And basically, I turned the company around in 6 months. I had 2 glasses on my desk. Every time I landed in New York, my stomach would start to grind. One was a vanilla malted, the other was Pepto-Bismol on ice. And, you just sat there and you did what you had to do to turn it around.
So did you save them from bankruptcy or did you buy them?
Oh, I saved them from bankruptcy. What I did was we bought it. We cleaned up the mess. A year after we took it over, we were breaking even. And a year after that, I was making $3 or $4 million a year out of that place. But it was brutal operating. And then I went out and I bought companies. I think I bought like 25 different ticket companies. I just show up and people would surrender. It was pretty funny. I bought 2 ticket companies in Florida. I bought a ticket company in Minnesota. I bought a ticket company in, I can't even remember.
It's a lot of merger and acquisition because when you buy a company, you don't just buy. I mean, there's a whole lot of accounting. There's a lot of legal involved. That's a whole process.
Well, we were pretty efficient and the systems were so much better than everybody else's system. So we had squads of people who could come in and take over, and we created all these regional centers for ourselves. And we were just adding inventory.
Did you have an M&A team at that point since you were doing so many?
Oh, I did them all.
You were on point on all of them?
Every one of them.
So it was a multiplier like that on a ticketing company back then.
Nobody knew. I mean, nobody knew it was a business. People told me it wasn't a business.
So they're just happy to get whatever you gave them?
Well, first of all, there were three things that happened when you bought them. Everybody was in the client accounts and using the client accounts to operate. I'll explain about that in a minute. And you had great operating efficiency. So let's say you bought a company for $4 million. They were all cheap. Ticketron was the most expensive one we bought, and I think we paid $11 million for that.
And they had the biggest market share of all the competitors
at that time. But all these little ones were $1.5 million, $3 million, $5 million, $4 million. We bought half a company in England for, I can't remember, maybe it was £4 million. But the thing that was interesting was, one comes to mind. They wanted 10 times earnings, which was like $175,000. So I paid them $1,700,000 for it. By the third year, we're making $700,000 or $1 million.
Your system was just so much better than theirs that you could make more money on their system than
and you didn't need their people. In most cases, their people didn't survive.
So it didn't matter what you were paying for them. You were going to be able to make the money back quicker the sooner you got them.
And what was interesting is we always ran, from my legal training, we had client accounts and operating accounts. And the client accounts was where all the money went that we collected from the credit card companies, the outlets, and so on. And then we would take our money and you'd pay the arenas or the facilities or the promoters their money. But even when we became a borrowing company, we taught the banks that the client money was not subject to rights of offset. That was not our money. It was we kind of considered it an escrow account. So that money was never commingled with our money.
Which made sense because it wasn't your money.
It wasn't. But we also, when we looked at our revenue was our service charges. I looked at ticket companies later and they said they're doing $1 million, but really they were doing like $150,000 or $100,000 because they count the face value of the tickets.
Which isn't their money.
Which wasn't their money. We never counted that in our revenue streams. So when we bought Ticketron, which needless to say, the press never got right, how do you let Ticketmaster buy it? The real story about buying that was as follows. A group of people had put money into Ticketron. It was a terrible system. They had a single ticket box and a season ticket box, and both systems were separate and they didn't talk to each other. So try to imagine that in one world. What they saw was they never segregated their accounts. So they borrowed $18 million from an SNL in Washington. And the people there never thought they were out of money because they were using their client money and revolving it.
So a Ponzi scheme, basically.
Well, not a Ponzi scheme, but basically they were using money that didn't belong to them. And I remember sitting with my partner and he said, why are we buying it? Why don't we just let them sink? And I said, look, if we let them sink, then I'm going to have every regulator in my face because you're dealing with the public's money. I never told the story because I figured, first of all, the press had such a hard-on for Ticketmaster that no one was going to listen. And B was, there was no point to it. I mean, what did I care? Write whatever you want as long as I can make the deal. And the government let us out to do it because ultimately what they recognized was that the public would have taken a hit for about $12 or $13 million. And what happened was, on closing, I think they wrote us a check for $3 million, and we absorbed $11 million in liabilities.
Who wrote the check?
The people who owned Ticketron in those days. It was the Carlyle Group, Abe Poland, and a bunch of other people.
So you essentially get the company for free, and they gave you $3 million, but you had to eat their debt?
Well, you had to make the $14 million right.
Right. So they gave you $3 million to help dig them out, but you had to just assume their debt, and you got their client list.
Well, you got the client list, then you got the liabilities. You know, it was such a mess.
So if they were at zero, you would have given them that money, but instead of giving them that money, you picked up the debt instead. They just didn't pocket anything.
Well, they lost their 100% of their investment in that deal. And what was interesting was that Ticketron had about $400 million in business, and the people who worked for me were remarkable.
$400 million in business.
In gross ticket sales. What we did was we basically made them disappear in 40 days. We basically took over their operation. I didn't pay anybody for a month because their books were so screwed up. And people would call me up and go, Fred, are you standing behind the money? And I go, yeah, just give me some time. And all the arenas waited until I could sort it out. No one lost a penny. Some of the smaller promoters I took care of so that they would have their money during that period.
Because some of those indies were all running out of their pockets.
Well, yeah, and you had to take care of them. But the fact of the matter is that it cost us $11 million to do it. And within a year, I thought I would lose $3 million during that period when we were converting them. And I think we made $5 million. I mean, basically, I got to pay back in 6 months.
And you picked up their market share.
Well, you took their market share and everybody was complaining and moaning that you had a monopoly. But, you know, everybody forgot that 20% of the buildings and contracts came up every year. And you were there to take the heat for the clients. And in the end, look, the fact is that what you prove in something like this is everybody's replaceable. No CEO is not replaceable. I was certainly connected to the company. The fact that you're sitting here and remember my name is pretty funny. But the reality is I built that business where I saw the world. You're gone longer than you were there, but some people still remember you, which I find, as I said, both flattering and kind of funny.
It was a different time, but my memory of you and my first interaction, and I know you probably don't remember, I think I told you, was I told Ticketmaster Denver that I was leaving some 26 years ago or something, or 25 years ago. And we were at that same Polestar conference, and it was set up that you and me were going to take 3 minutes together. And in a couple minutes, you're like, look, you'll be able to sleep at night while I have your money. Who knows what happens with some of these other companies, but I'm telling you, I've seen them all. I don't think they have the money. At some point, you could go out of business when they go out of business. So just think about that. We'd love to have your business, but that's it. That's the pitch. But you took the time. I was not doing $1 million in business yet.
No, I talked to a lot of young promoters, and I helped a lot of them because I got a kick out of the fact that you were trying. The thing that was always interesting to me was that I liked young men or women who were out there hustling because I thought that was kind of what America was all about. And if you could go up against the tough guys, because certainly being a promoter was territorial, if I could be of some help, and you didn't need the extra burden. There were always people who would think they could do it without me, and then I'd try to clean up the mess that they made. And then, when you sat back and thought about, I always remember I would have this, when you got bigger, when we got really big, people would come in and see you, and you had to walk a line. The line was, how do you manage this without being perceived as being tough or strong or taking advantage? People would walk in a room, walk into your office and go, I need A and B. And you go, I can't do that because that gives me a problem, but I'll give you C, D, E, and F. Pick one of these 6. I'll help you. And they go, no, I want A. And you go, no, I'm not going to give you A because that impacts. What people never understood is if you throw a rock in a lake, there are ripples. And if you do for one, you do for all, because there are no secrets in the business, because if somebody does well, they can't help but tell everybody else how well they're doing. So I would say, no, I'll give you C, D, E, or F. And they go, no, I got to have A. And I had the power and the wherewithal to say, you can't have A. And then they'd walk out of the room and go, see, he beat me up. You drive home at night and go, what the hell's wrong with people? Why don't they understand? If you sit in your shoes, you're trying to find a way to help them. Some people don't want help. And if people come at you perpendicularly, you're going to hammer them. And I knew how to hammer them. And what was interesting is in the Pearl Jam thing, to go back to that, I mean, I don't blame the band. I think the band was taken advantage of by some people around them, but nobody else joined them. That was the whole stupid thing in the whole process. They were out there because nobody thought this was an issue. And here's the part that was totally weird. Fortunately, there was no social media in those days, and, you could just deal with the normal press. But the fact was, not only did nobody join them, but with all the negative press we got, our sales went up, which means there was a disconnect between what rock and roll thought and what the public thought.
So there is no bad press.
There is no bad press.
By the way, 27 years later, every time I've gotten pitched from another ticketing company, and I never left Ticketmaster, I'm one of their longest clients at this point, still comes down to I can sleep at night because you were fucking right. Teleseat in Colorado was the other competing company.
Right.
And they went belly up and they took some promoters down with them.
Right.
And took some big show money with them at the same time. You had predicted that. One of those things that kept me up at night. It was a hard decision. I wanted to be with a smaller, cooler ticketing company at the time. And I didn't go because you took 3 minutes to say to me, you never know. If I have your money, we're always going to pay you.
Well, the other side was this. This is the part. We became the bank for the industry, and that gave you responsibility. And the thing that was interesting, of all the 20 companies I bought, everybody was in the client accounts. Everybody used the client accounts to operate.
When you say in it, you mean they were using the money? Not like you were using the trust accounts. They were actually using the revenue, and they were circling through the monty.
And it was only a matter of time before they would either yell for help.
Because of a sinking ship.
Well, the problem was this. The problem was they never understood the business they were in. I remember when Ticket Trial went out, when they got refinanced in, I think it was 89, there was a guy running it whose name is not worth mentioning. And so they went out into America and they went to all the arenas because one of their owners was an NBA owner. And they said, well, we're much nicer than Fred. And they go, okay. And we're going to be a nicer company than Fred. Went, okay. And we're going to have lower service charges. And they went, okay. And they said, well, how much do I get? And I go, well, we know you were making $500,000 or $1 million with Fred, but we can't pay you that if we lower the service charges. So we're going to pay you half. And they go, Fred's fine. We can deal. we can deal with Fred. Fred's not a problem. I mean, look, it works. And
those are our bonuses.
Well, the other side was I used to sit with the arenas and say to them, look, how much do you want to make? This is a blackboard, empty blackboard. I need X. I need X for outlets. I need Y for phones. And that's the base, and it goes up every year in rock and roll, and we're not going to have discussions about whether it goes up or not. How much do you want to make? Do you want me to get $1, $2, $3, $4? Because service charges were a faucet. And you decide. But what you can't tell me is how much I make.
You get to count your money, not mine.
Yeah. And those were the fights you had for the first 6-7 years. And there was the day that we talked about when I was at Polestar. This is my favorite line. You made $75,000 and I lost $200. Yeah. Well, why'd you lose $200 if you knew the act was bad? Well, because somebody else would have done it. And I go, and that's my problem because? I mean, the fact of the matter was that I put lines in the sand. Now, a lot of those lines have been blurred as life changed and the internet changed and so on. What was interesting, which I've never discussed, is that when the internet came and we started doing transactions, someone came in my office and said, we don't have these in our contracts. And I said, well, we'll just take it. We'll just take it and we'll tell them it's the same as the phone charge and tell them they're getting the same rebates and it'll be fine. And that's what happened. Then basically as contracts extended, we added the internet and nobody thought twice about it.
It's not like anybody else had the technology to do it anyway.
No, right. And what you had when all is said and done, when all the adjectives were used, people trusted us. They didn't necessarily like me. They didn't necessarily think I was warm and fuzzy, but they thought I was honest and they thought that we performed a good service. The legacy I leave, which is probably more important to me than anybody else, is that the company grew. It grew with different people running it. It grew with people who didn't have the same passion or the same excitement. When you have a startup, you live it. When you manage it, it's a job. And all these jobs, even in the entertainment business, if you don't own the companies, they're all rented. And there is a reality that we had a lot of fun. I have a million stories. I have a lot of fun about building it, about dealing with people, basically birthing a company. And when I left, we had 5,000 people, and then you didn't need that many operators. You had 2,500 people working for you and 2,500 operators. And when you think about that, you go from 25 people to 5,000, that's pretty heady. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me, which maybe some of your listeners will find, is that most people who started with me were making between $30,000 and $50,000 a year, and I made 50 or 60 of them millionaires because when we went public, they all got options and we all did pretty well. We put domestic partner insurance in Ticketmaster in 91 or 92 because we recognized that human capital was the most important capital. You're in a business, it's fun. It's a little nuts. People are wired a little differently. It's gotten bigger, so it's got more corporations are dealing with it than it was entrepreneurial because we made stuff up as it went along. Look, no one knew if the company would get to tomorrow. When there were people who came to me and said, I hope one day to make 6 figures. I mean, it was like nobody thought like that. And ticket companies were thought in the back of the bus. They weren't thought to be respected. And guys like me, who came from a legal profession and who were thought of being dealt with differently, weren't going to be treated like we were in the back of the bus. And then you got funny stories. So I'm sitting with one arena, which contracts up, and they sit down and they go, we told you, we know what we want to renew it. And it was one of the major arenas in America. And I said, okay. And they said, we want $5 million a year. That's what we want. And I said, that's fine. And they said, you're not going to, I go, no. I said, we're going to have to change the service charges. They said, what are we going to have to change them to? I said, well, it's going to be $30 at the outlets and $50 on the phones. And they said, that's crazy. And I go, so I was asking for $5 million. Did you bother adding up how much money you get total? The aggregate of service charges that this building generates is in the low 4 million. So how am I going to give you 5? And you'd sit in a room with people and they'd say, oh, we're going to do this ourselves, which they never could. And the fact of the matter is, Ticketmaster survived and flourishes because the people who are in the business understand a third of what you sell people hate, that complaints are part of the reality. And it's a company that's highly efficient. Not going to be loved. It's not like warm and fuzzy. You're not going to have Ticketmaster beanie babies. But what you are going to have is it works. The tickets wind up in the hands it belongs to. And you're going to get paid.
Part of it that I think a lot of people overlook is you guys made credibility for the acts. When we told the acts how many tickets we sold, you guys gave us a report, which was a third party bonifying what was actually sold. And the technology of scanning things and changing them didn't exist back then.
No.
So when Ticketmaster gave you an audit, you knew that was right off the system from Ticketmaster.
There were always provisions in the contract that clients had the right to audit us or to come in and send accountants in and review what we paid. No one ever did that. We created a level of discipline and a level of credibility that we were the bank. We became the bank for the industry and the gold standard and platinum standard. So when we paid somebody, people could settle off our audits. It wasn't a joke. It was real. And that was from me. Two things people didn't have a sense of humor about. money and systems. People have no sense of humor about saying you're not getting paid, and people have no sense of humor if your system doesn't work. And part of it, in terms of the philosophy I have, because I don't know how anything works, and I never understood, I understand the psychology of it, but not how it works. I said, people don't have a sense of humor. So I know when it doesn't work. And what you need to know is this. People, when they're watching television, if you have DirecTV and it goes from channel 2 to HBO, which is 501, you don't really care how it got there, but that's technology that took you there because you're on a different frequency. And I'd read stories about the fact how Ticketmaster had no technology, how our technology was bad or terrible because all it did was spit out a ticket. But that was nonsense. It was seamless. We made it look too easy, and people bitched because they said, what am I paying all this for? But they never understood.
They didn't know the back end and the customer service
They didn't know
you're
the
providing.
back end and the reality of what you're required to do. And what I did is when I went to the arenas, I think the Meadowlands was a perfect example. When we won that contract, it used to cost the Meadowlands $250,000 a year. And I said, I'll basically give you everything for free. You'll make $500,000 a year. Well, that's a $750,000 swing. And basically, I took the cost out of ticketing for the arenas and the promoters and put it in the hands of the public. And what was interesting is over the years, the public kept moving further and further away from the box office. And then if I made any mistake, this is certainly one of them. Box office is closed because the only people who showed up were scalpers. Most box offices are not central to where anybody lives. It's not like a movie theater was within 10 minutes of where you live. And so the only people who would show up at the arena box offices were scalpers or people that scalpers sent to buy tickets. And the arenas got tired of it. And they said, we're just going to close on the first day. And of course, Ticketmaster got blamed. But, in the end, I probably would have kept it open and worked with them to keep it open because it wasn't worth the noise.
Before I let you go, I want to circle back to, you said that you started in law. How do you go from law to the godfather of ticketing, essentially?
Well, first of all, life is about serendipity. Your journeys are not quite what you think. There was a guy in Chicago who had made an investment in Ticketmaster, and he put in, I think, $3 million in 1980 or 81. And he had about 10 companies that I was special counsel to. I'll make that really easy, of which Ticketmaster was one. And Ticketmaster was a minority partner in a ticket company in Houston that was owned by Angelo Drossis, who owned the Spurs, Louis Dickstein, who had a company called Rainbow Ticketmaster in Dallas, the Houston Astros, or the people who owned the Astrodome, Pace, and the people who owned the Summit. And between the five of them, they owned 100% of the tickets in Houston. And Pace was also involved. They were the backers, the biggest concert promoters. So it was all the principal players. And what they did in those days is interest rates, prime was 22%. Basically, they took a $650,000 system. I can tell the story because it's 25 years ago. It's 35 years ago. They took a $650,000 system, borrowed $1.7 million so they could pay everybody to be in the deal. They spent all their time, all decisions were unanimous. So they spent all their time fighting. And they had gone from 100% of the market to maybe 60 or 65. And at 22% interest, the thing was cash flowing even, breaking even. And I'm sitting in rooms with these guys, and they're complaining what a bad investment this is. And I'm looking at this, and I recognize I'm from New York, and I recognize I have some financial training, and I'm going, this is a total clusterfuck. I mean, this is really a clusterfuck. There's no way to say it. And I said, if you can break even with 22% prime and 5 partners fighting, what could you do with a company where you had one leader, one strong focus, one voice to listen to, and not borrow 22%? And that's what motivated me to get into Ticketmaster. Now, that's part one. So I get it financed, and I had signed a deal with the White Sox. This is before the Pritzkers got involved. It had 3 conditions, I still remember them, of what we needed to do for them to come on and sign us a contract. One was tell them we'd have a system up and running in Chicago in September of 82 or October. We tell them who the outlets were in the summer and get the company financed. And anybody who would say to me, I'll get the company financed, tells you they're not losing anything and didn't think much of Ticketron. And I remember when I got the contract signed and I turned it over to the president of Ticketmaster, and he called me up about a month later and he said, they won't return you my phone calls. And so I called Howard Pizer, who is still at the White Sox and a friend. And I called Howard and I said, why aren't you returning Bob's calls? And he said, we don't want to deal with him. We want to deal with you. And I went, you want to deal with me? I'm the lawyer. What the hell do I know? He said, we want to deal with you. So that kind of put the bone in my head. So then we get a foothold in Chicago. I figure, okay, we'll go back to New York, but I need 3 things in New York. I need Meadowlands, Radio City, Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, and both ball clubs, you need 3. And I could get 1 ball club in Nassau Coliseum, but the Garden wouldn't talk to us, the Meadowlands wouldn't talk to us, the Yankees wouldn't talk to us, Broadway wouldn't talk to us. And out of the blue, we get this call to go do the ticketing for the US Festival in California in December or January of 82. Come out to LA, and I have breakfast with Terry Bassett and Bob Geddes. And we talk about what the business could be. And I have a bunch of people I'm going to hire, and we take this 6-month lease in LA. And Bassett calls me in February of 83. He met me once. And this is a true story. And he said, you need to come to LA. I said, I got all those other people. I live in New York. He said, no, you need to come. If you don't come, this will fail. And he was right. And I said, Terry, I don't know anybody. He said, you need to come. And I said, okay. I figure I'm getting hammered in New York. I'm losing money in Chicago. I got nothing to lose. And I get on a plane and I come to LA for 6 months. And I'm fascinated. I don't understand anything about the city. I know 1 or 2 people other than him. He was absolutely adamant that I come. He said, you will make a difference. I have no idea to this day. When I talked to him before he passed, this is years ago, he said, I just knew you could do this. I don't know why, it's like people. It's judging people and what they were. And so I come out here and, I had this vision or this belief that we had a better system. It could do season ticketing and single ticketing on one system, and people would want that. And yet people talked about that and then would say, yeah, but you can't charge more than $1. And even though we hate Ticketron, we know it works, and we don't know if we want to deal with you and everything else. And I get a number of clients, and I'm dealing with the forum. And there was a wonderful man there named Lou Baumeister and a wonderful woman there named Claire Rothman. And I never thought in May and June of 83 that I would get them as a client, because they were one of Ticketron's first clients. And so you're negotiating from a point of view almost of like you have nothing to lose. So why
You're
not?
just kind of bidding up the other guy.
Well, no, we're just kind of playing. And the net effect is that you weren't playing, but you didn't think it was serious. You were serious, but you didn't think they were serious. And what I learned at the beginning was I was a deal guy and knew how to do stuff, knew how to do workout stuff. And nobody was buying that the equipment was better and that was worth the change. And so I said, okay, if they won't do that, then why don't I just start screwing with service charges and raising them and cutting them in? Don't ask me where that came from, but it did. I get a call. I told Lou that for them to be up September 1st, 1983, I would need to know by June 30th because I would need 60 days to order the equipment, do what was required, and so on. So he calls me just about June 30th. And I get on the phone with him, and I'm standing up because I always take bad news better standing up in those days. And I'm waiting for him to tell me that he's given the deal to Ticketron. And he says to me, we're close, but we're not there. I go, can you hold on? Your heart's pound. I don't care who you are. When you're building something, everything counts. I sit down, count to 10. I go, okay, Lou, where are we? He said, we're close, but we're not there. I need a sweetener. I go, really? Okay, let me think about that. I said, I'm out of things to think about. Why don't you think about it and tell me, and I'll tell you the yes or no. So he says, fine. That night was a charity affair. And I'm driving back to the house I was renting, and I'm thinking, if I let him pick what he wants, he'll take the company. So I came up with something else, and I walked over to him. I said, come on, let's go get a drink. And we walked off on the side, and I said, I'll do this for you. It had to do with software programming and a bunch of things. And I said, I'll just give it to you. He said, that sounds very compelling. Let me think about it overnight. So the next day was July 1st, and I fly back to New York for July 4th weekend. And I walk in the house. I had a house in the Hamptons in those days. And I walk in the house, and the phone rings. I'm not in the house 5 minutes. He goes, this is Lou. I want you to know you're getting the deal. Well, you can be elated, but there's nobody to be elated to. Your kid is young. You're going through your own issues in your home because nobody wanted to go to California except you. So I take that news, and it's fine. And then on July 5th, and I assume I have till September 1st to convert them. On July 5th, I get a call from one of my guys who says, we have a problem. Lou needs to call you. Ticketron's not going to take the 60-day notice. They're going to pull out in 2 weeks. I go, really? Can we get him up? And they go, yeah, we'll get him up. I go, okay. So I call Lou, and Lou says to me, if I wasn't sure before, I'm sure now no one's going to muscle me. And it was a New York play. And I'm from New York. I knew exactly what they were doing to bring them to their knees. And basically, I'll spare you all the messy details. I said, Lou, I'll come back tomorrow. He said, how long are you be in New York for? I said, a week. He said, enjoy your time. Come back next Monday. So I flew back the following Monday. On Tuesday, we were moving equipment into the forum. Lou and I were sitting downstairs negotiating the contract. We didn't even have time we just marked it up. I mean, and over the years, he'd call me, so do you remember what that meant? And I go, no. Do you remember what that meant? No. What do you want to do? And it was that kind of relationship.
But you trusted each other, so it was okay.
We did. And we signed the contract, and a Journey show went on sale the following Monday. Now, here's what happened. Being the person I was, that message went out into America that Ticketron had basically fucked their client. And that helped me in marketing because, not only did we step up, but we got them done and we built a relationship and people went, okay, so who is Ticketmaster and who's this guy, Fred Rosen? And that's where personality has an impact. I mean, if you look at all the people who have run Ticketmaster since I left, there's probably 8 of them. They're all nice. They're all fine for what they are, but they're managers. They're people who can take what they have and build what they have. And they're nice people. They're good people. And they're doing a good job running the company. But in those days, every day was a crisis, and every day you were on a precipice, and every day you were trying to figure out what the hell was going to come next, and you had to take advantage of the opportunity. When we got that deal at the Forum, we needed to put in phone lines. So I get a call the next day, says the phone company can't put a phone line in for 3 weeks. I get on the phone, start screaming at people. One of my guys says, all I need is one phone line. I can build a box. He built an illegal box. We got the phone line in 2 days because I made such a stink. And they built this piece of communication equipment which ran the whole Forum box office until we could put in the right lines. But you had people who were smart and creative, who weren't afraid. And in the end, it was always batter up. Don't be afraid, batter up. And you sat in a room with people, and sometimes you won, sometimes you lost. Sometimes the calls were brutal, sometimes the calls were fun. But to run a ticket company, you got to be a chameleon. One call's from the head of the Philharmonic, the next call is from a rock and roll promoter, the next call's from a building manager, the next call's from a team. You can't be the same guy to every one of them. You have to be different. And underneath it all, you have to be honest, and you have to have integrity, and you have to have service, and you need to love what you do. And it was never work. The 16 years I had there, I had the most fun of my life. For real. And I've had fun now. I mean, it's a different time in my life, and it's fun doing what we do. But that was fun because people didn't see it. And once you saw that, once you were in the middle of that, call it whatever you want, it was an interesting time. And you took a lot of good people with you. And the people you put around you did things they never thought they could do in their lives. So to the extent that you can elevate people and make human beings and employees do things they never thought possible, you get a lot of psychic income out of that too. And that was fun. And so, I'm happy Ticketmaster's still around. The drama doesn't go away. They'll be fighting this 10 years from now. Whose ticket is it? What happened? It won't be a ticket then. It'll be your shoelace. You'll be able to look in and it'll be scanned when you walk in, or a hair follicle, or your eye. It's all crazy in terms of what it is. But underneath it all is this. You're in the middle of people going out and enjoying themselves. And that's powerful.
Thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
My pleasure.
Fred is a serious player. He really has changed the face of ticketing. It was great to hear his viewpoint on how the world works.
This is AJ Paul, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's that time of the hour to focus on Steiny's tweet of the week.
Here we go. There are stupid questions, an amazing amount of them.
Not sure whoever had the idea that there are no stupid questions. Let's be very clear. That is a wrong way to look at the world. There are some very stupid fucking questions.
To err is human. To turn that error into a profit is an entrepreneurial skill.
True dat. Entrepreneurs never give up. If you can turn a $10,000 loss into a $3,000 loss, you're making a $7,000 profit. That's the right way to win. Keep fighting to the bell.
A talent buyer is the air traffic controller of the concert world, skillfully maneuvering holds in hopes of not landing on top of each other.
Traffic only gets worse as time seems to go on with traffic on the road these days.
That does it for Promoter 101 tweets. You can follow Dan at the Jew on Twitter.
And once again, Jeff is not on Twitter, so you cannot follow him unless you're in the bar and walking behind him.
Hi, this is John Scher from Metropolitan Entertainment Consultants, Promoter 101.
We're thrilled to share this brand new war story from Goldenvoices' Susan Rosenbluth.
I actually booked Aretha on several occasions. My first season at the Greek, her brother, Reverend Cecil Franklin, I was in charge of paying the cash to the artist, and I'm pretty sure this is back in the 80s. The guarantee was $40,000, and I was paying it all in cash during the show to Reverend Franklin. He comes in the box office. I had pre-counted the money and put it in the envelope like you do, right? I take out the envelope, I hand him the cash, and he starts stuffing it in his boots. he had cowboy boots on and jeans. And I said, Reverend Franklin, with all due respect, you don't know me. Don't you want to count that? He goes, no, you have an honest face. I trust you. And he keeps stuffing in his boots. And I said, okay, but if you leave and, you're short when you go count this money later on, that I can't be responsible. I would really prefer it. I knew enough to say I really prefer it if you'd count it. And he goes, no, it's fine. And I told Aretha that story about 3 years ago, the last time she played for us in LA. And she came back to me later in the show, after the show, and told me that she had appreciated me telling her that story. So that was pretty cool.
She appreciated it as in, I'm going to kill him?
Yeah, well, he was already passed on. So, and I hesitated before I told her that story, because they're the famous stories about her putting her purse on the piano and keeping the cash with her during the show. So
I had one of those. She was having vertigo and she had to keep restarting counting, and it was almost comical. And we were sitting there and we talked for 40 minutes because she socializes with you while she counts money, right?
Yes, she does.
And it's never a small amount of money. So even though you send half in advance and, regardless of the deals in the industry that everything's 10%, with Aretha, you want to send as much as possible because you're going to be there counting it. So it was never a question of how much. We're only sending 10%. It's like, we'll send 100% so long as we don't have to be back there counting $100,000.
After the show, an hour after the show, before she pays the road crew.
Well, yeah, it's like, what, $125,000 now? It's it takes a long time. Can we send 90%? Scott, what can we send? I trust ICM. What can I send you in advance? But it's great. You're sitting there with a legend and she's got the stories.
Oh my God. Yeah. She was a consummate professional. She really was. And it was kind of fun to watch her interact with her staff too.
She was great. She was one of the few artists that used to tell me where she wanted to go. Like, you don't get that a lot from the artists. And we're trained not to talk business directly with the artists, especially promoters that are a little bit older. Like, we used to not be allowed to talk to the managers direct. We get in trouble for that before.
Yeah, well, those days are gone.
But she was a little different. And she'd say, hey, I really want to get in Grand Rapids. We're not going to tour forever. So that's close to home for me. And she bussed everywhere. So I'm like, okay, how long's it been? She's like, I was there 32 years ago.
Wow.
And there's a chicken place there. And I'd really like to go see if that chicken place is still there. It's like, we could probably surf the internet and getting hit by like 4 other people going, just book the show. Shut up.
Exactly. Just book the show.
Just book the show, of course. Which is funny because then she gets there and she's like, send a runner to go to the chicken place. I'm not going to the chicken place. Of course she's not going to the chicken place.
We got her Pink's hot dogs last time she played the Microsoft. And she loved them so much that she had the Pinks. Mrs. Pink came out on stage with her, started handing out hot dogs to the people in the front of the audience.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then she did like a 5-minute commercial on Pink's hot dogs.
Just in real time on stage?
Just real time on stage. I was like, okay, please start singing. She did.
She doesn't cut the show short. She has fun, though. That's part of those, though. You get the legends like Christofferson or Haggard or Johnny, Aretha, Etta James. The stories are half the fun.
Oh, yeah.
They take you back to a time that you couldn't possibly go to again.
I'm pretty sure it was B.B. King, whose writer at the Greek one year was a bottle of Jack, a bottle of water, and 2 glasses. And he showed up 15 minutes before curtain, went to have his drink with his buddy backstage. And I just remember going back thinking about all the racism that he must have experienced in his early years. And, I wanted to take better care of him than just a bottle of Jack. And he's like, no, honey, there's nothing else I want. We're good. I said, okay.
Just to be in the room and see some of that. It's like something you'll never lose. It's pretty cool. It's one of the cooler things about the industry.
Definitely.
Love the story. Susan is just so fucking cool. What a legend.
This is Dan Weiner from Paradigm on Promoter 101.
Up next, John Pantle talks to us just days before he left his post at APA with his view of the biz from K-pop to Public Enemy.
Hanging out in beautiful Los Angeles, California. And John Pantle is our guest today. Dude, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, boss. How you doing?
We've known each other for a very long time.
Dude, more than 20 years.
If I collected business cards, yours alone would fill a Rolodex.
I've been around. I'm a tiny dancer, but I got fast feet. I've been around. Yeah, man. First off, it's really, really great for this podcast to exist. I congratulate you for putting this together to create a history of the stories that all of us have heard from people whose presence have guided us through our careers and travails. It's pretty awesome. Congratulations, brother.
Oh, man. Thank you. But today's not about me. It's about you. You work with some of the most epically legendary cool bands of all time. I mean, Public Enemy, Run DMC, these guys call you agent.
That's true. I work in a number of different fields. I work within the structure of what those guys do. I also represent a lot of Latin artists, including Calle Trece, Residente, Natalia Lafourcade, Zoe, Molotov, just to name a few.
And there's some K-pop in there too, is that right?
I work with a lot of K-pop artists. I put together the last tour for CL, for AOMG, for Epic High. We just launched the Minzy tour. I also represent some J-pop artists. We're about to announce a couple tours that are going to be going out, which are going to be great. And I also represent World of Dance Live, which is the television show on NBC, and we're in our second season now.
Let's talk about J-pop and K-pop for a second, because some people may not be familiar with those genres of music.
Sure.
I know the J and the K stand for some pretty simple things. Can you go ahead and explain?
The internet is awesome, and it has allowed all of us to learn about music from all over the world. And it has allowed a large amount of people to find music that they really like. And there's some fantastic music coming out of Korea. There's some fantastic music coming out of Japan.
So J for Japan.
J for Japan, K
Korea.
for pop. Also, there's K hip-hop, J rock. There's all different kinds of...
Is there I-pop? Is there stuff coming out of Ireland that we should be familiar with?
Yeah, Proclaimers.
All right, well, there you go. They were there early. Andy Summers is the biggest agent in America for I-pop.
Right. Cantopop is a big deal. Hip-hop over in China is a huge deal.
What's Cantopop?
Just kind of pop music with Chinese lyrics, mostly Mandarin. The same sort of production values, really sweet. There's Cantopop and there's Mandopop or M-pop. One's in Cantonese and one's in Mandarin.
Okay, so you're dealing with all these international acts. How the fuck do you find them? Like, as the agent, you're like, all right, you got the internet, I get that, but how do you become their agent? And then on top of that, are they all speaking English, or are you having to, like, get a translator? Like, this is a whole lot of international business, massive time change. There's some serious challenges in this space.
Well, first off, I get to the office usually around like 5 a.m. So that's genius time, because over in Asia, they're just getting out of happy hours, and you can get them on the phone and confirm tours pretty easily and have very frank discussions with everybody. If you're successful as an agent and you're able to put together an entire concept for them and explain how touring works, and if you're transparent the whole way, you're showing them all of the offers, you're explaining to them what an agent does, you're walking them through how to get the flights, how to get the hotel rooms, how to get the bus, how to make the whole thing happen, then they're more likely to trust you. Then they want to work with you. And after you've done 2 or 3 successful tours, you'll find people that want to come to you. The toughest part at that point
there's a critical mass.
Right. You just get a reputation for being good at what you do and honest at what you do. I mean, much like when I was a promoter. If you're able to deliver bad news with the same focus and honesty as you can deliver good news, then people are going to appreciate you. People are going to want to work with you because they know you're going to be a straight shooter. In our business these days, information is key. You don't really need agents. You really don't need promoters. You really don't need managers, because the business can always find somebody to fulfill those roles as they were traditionally.
We don't need agents or managers. So are you saying that I should just start going directly to the X and going around the agent?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I wouldn't dare say that. What I'm
Just trying
saying
to clarify. Trying to make sure I'm getting your message straight, John.
Thank you.
We got to stay on brand here.
What I'm saying is, my personal philosophy is I want to teach my artists to understand what I do as a business and to understand what all the parts of our business are about. And if an artist understands that, then they don't feel like they have to pay somebody a percentage. They feel like they want to give that percentage to somebody who's guiding them into a situation.
Artists are cheap bastards. They never want to pay their agent. I don't believe you for a second.
If you can explain to artists how to tour effectively and why things happen and how the sausage is made, you're going to find people that are more amenable and are more open to showing you how their world works. And most of the time it works out okay. But it's a process. I mean, the amount of information that we go through, the amount of discussions that we have, sometimes one genre will overlap with another genre, but really it's a lot of work. Like, you know, not all the same people who buy a Korean act are going to buy a Japanese act, and not all those same people are going to buy a Tokyo Sky Paradise Orchestra or buy a Latin Sky act. there's some Venn diagrams where there's some similarities and some, like, for example, Mexico and Japan have a tremendous amount of overlap. And Mexico and Korea have a tremendous amount of overlap, but none of that really overlaps with like Public Enemy or Run DMC. So you end up spending a lot of time learning a lot of people. Now, the great part about that is if you have a lot of reach, if you have a lot of interest in wanting to learn about the business and how it works and how you make the cake, then you love it. That's the great part about it.
There's a lot of international there. Does that create a lot of international travel for you?
It does a lot. I go to a lot of conferences. Last year I went to Colombia, Taiwan, Japan, Mexico, Canada, all over the United States. Are
you scouting when you're out there, or are you there covering dates and going to conferences?
A little bit of everything. You're learning new people. I tend to put more faith in managers than artists per se, but you're trying to get an idea as to where the kids are at, what the kids are doing. It's great to get the metrics off of, Pirate Bay or YouTube or Spotify. You can find out what people are actually listening to. But to really get the full impact on if something's going to blow up and get bigger, you have to see it in person.
As we mentioned, we've known each other for a very long time. I remember a dinner when you were a buyer at House of Blues. You, me, Josh Humiston, Mike Thrasher, like going back years.
I think that was in Austin.
Might have been.
Yeah.
No, I think it was Vegas, actually.
Oh, nice.
I think maybe we were at the Hard Rock in Vegas. I don't know. I remember it was a fun night. It was ridiculous. I don't know what scenario put us all at the same table, but it was a fun night. Anyway, that night we were talking about so many different genres and issues in the business. Mm-hmm. And then we were worried about the consolidation of the business and what was going to happen. You were at House of Blues, which wasn't Live Nation at that point.
Right.
Josh was at APA.
Josh was at APA.
Me and Mike were doing shows together.
Right.
We were, but we were all making way less than probably are now. And maybe a little bit less job security for all of us.
Right.
But we were all talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could all get back together in 25 years and have the same dinner? And then the bill came and was like, well, maybe we'll go to McDonald's or In-N-Out. And Josh was very nice that night and he killed his expense account on us because I seem to remember Josh picked up that bill, which was very
He's a charitable man.
Yeah. Probably at that point, a very big bill to turn in at that point. I think it was passed that along way easier now.
Yeah.
I think we both owe Josh a dinner. Shit.
That's true.
I find it really interesting that years later, and we're all still in the business. Mike is doing very well in the Northwest. You've become a promoter and an agent and a promoter and a different agency, but you're doing very well with it. And as a chameleon, you tend to change with your environment and just kind of make it work. And with that, you've got the most interesting roster of almost any agent I know. World of Dance on one side. You've got K-pop and J-pop. And on top of having some of the best old school rap that we all love and know from the 80s, you've got professional wrestling from Japan.
New Japan Pro Wrestling.
So diverse because you can book Run DMC in the same market as New Japan Pro Wrestling and not compete.
No, they don't. Well, I think you got to be.
Although you and me would want to be at both, I think.
Yeah. You know what it's like to be a fan of professional wrestling. It's a very, very strange beast. Some people will understand it and they'll be able to share moments with you. They're like, oh, B. Brian Blair and whatever.
Jim Bronzell.
Right.
Killer B.
Jumpin' Jim. And then other people think you're completely insane. It's wacko. Another great thing about the internet is now there's podcasts that talk about wrestling. And people who like wrestling, they don't have to feel like, they're going to read magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and just be in that one group of people. You've got a whole group of people out there who know it's all BS and know that all these people actually like each other, but when they're on the stage, they hate each other. And it's opera for the masses. It's Shakespeare for the masses. That's one of the things I really like about working with it is that there's a set fan base. They love going to it. They don't mind paying money. They don't mind paying up to $150, $175 for a top tier ticket. And they want to see great performances. And sometimes a great performance is Bruce Springsteen, and sometimes a great performance is the Slackers. Sometimes a great performance is watching Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks at New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's got a television show at Access TV. They've got a lot of events coming up. They're doing a co-promote with Ring of Honor at Madison Square Garden next year. It's already sold out. And we're going to be building out their footprint more in the United States and South America and in Europe over the next 2 years. They're already doing really well in Southern California. They're able to sell out the Long Beach Pyramid within hours of going on sale. And I really think that the people who like this and are exposed to this will keep coming to it. So to me, I don't see a difference between working on this versus working on Perfume versus working on Minzy versus working on the Slackers. What you're doing in all of these cases is you're finding an audience and you're broadcasting to that audience. And you find the right ticket price, you put together the right deals, and hopefully you can find a team of people on the other side of it to create one side together. Because the best shows are everybody working together towards one direction, everybody rowing in one way. And it's also sometimes the most difficult, but when you're lucky, it comes together.
Of all of your acts, you have some that you're going to like more than others. You just are. We all have preferences. You got musical tastes. So what artists do you work with that you pinch yourself every day that you're like, I can't believe I get to work with these guys?
One of the most exhilarating, and I'll go with that one because it seems like less that it's going to alienate all the other artists that I work with. One of the wildest ones I work with is Hatsune Miku. Hatsune Miku is a computer image that was created by a Japanese company, but the music of which has been crowdsourced through a Vocaloid company who's created a series of contests. And fans of the Hatsune Miku Vocaloid program, you're looking at me like this is totally crazy to you.
Yeah, it's new to me.
Okay, so Vocaloid is a computer program that if you type in, I am doing fine, and then you scroll the mouse
to go, spell, like when we were kids?
Yeah, it's like speak and spell.
You are correct.
Correct. So this company in Japan decided that they were only going to sell Vocaloid to people who were nerds, and they realized they needed to go mainstream. So they hired this animator to draw a little girl, and they go, it's Hatsune Miku. Look, it's Hatsune Miku. She's doing her thing.
So this is their mascot.
This is their mascot. And then every kid in Japan who had the computer program started writing songs, just started sharing it with each other. It's primarily women, primarily around 12, 13, 14 years old. So they're starting to use this computer program to make music. It starts to get so powerful, and so many people were into it that the company starts creating videos of Hatsune Miku dancing to the songs, to the most popular songs. Then the company realizes that they can make a 3D image of Hatsune Miku dancing, and they can put it in an audience with a live band as the backing of it. So they put this together, and then I'd start going, oh man, this is crazy. So I started talking to them, and for about 3 years, they were like, no, leave me alone. You're a Comic-Con person. You're not going to know what you're doing. And then after a while, they were like, no, actually, he does know what he's doing. Why does he keep bothering us? He's not giving up on this. Oh, it seems like he thinks that there's real business here. This is kind of confusing, but let's listen to him. And then over time, we figured out how to take the thing out on the road. And now, we sell out the Hammerstein Ballroom. We sell out the Microsoft in Los Angeles. We've been able to take it out on tour. We're doing Europe in December. We're doing South America next year. And it's a computer program. It's a 3D image, a cartoon of a fictional person with a band backing it up. And people love it and pay real money to see it.
So you found a logo and a mascot that you were like, there's something here. And then you had to convince them to license it or to let you tour it, right? And then on top of that, you had to develop a show because you just took basically a mascot and turned it into a full fucking concert.
Well, they had created a bare bones concept of it, but we took it into a touring element. They'd only done it in a few places, and it was very limited in scope. And what we did is we built out the advertising, built out the team, and worked really closely with their management company in Sapporo and put the whole thing out on the road. And that to me is like completely insane. It's completely insane that somebody was able to do it. It's wild that people pay tickets to see it, and they're happy about it, and they love it, and they keep coming back to it. And I'm really, really proud that I'm able to do it. And I worked with APA, was really supportive. And when I first brought it up to Jim Gosnell and then kind of explained it to him, he was confused as all hell. But he understood that it could work and he believed in me. And so like I went over to Japan a couple times and we figured the whole thing out. And now it brings me a lot of joy to know that I was able to create something that at first seemed so obtuse, but translates into so much happiness and so much joy and so much economic power.
And at the same time, you're very unlikely to get fired by a cartoon.
She can be really bad backstage. She gets really pissed.
Is there a diva program they run?
I once brought Sailor Moon backstage, and Sue Rosenbluth can tell you about it. It was really bad. It was at the Microsoft, and I brought Sailor Moon backstage with me. And I don't know why she was in town. I don't know. And she lost her shit. She lost her mind, and she said she wasn't going to do the show, and we had to jumpstart her.
The fuck are you talking about?
It was fucking weird, man.
The computer program freaked out? Dude, what are you on right now?
She's got feelings, man. She's got feelings. And it was weird, and I was there, and Susan was there, and it was bad, and I didn't do a good job.
You were there, and
I wasn't good as an agent. I was a bad person.
I think we've gone off the rails, my friend.
Yes.
All right, let's reel it back in a little bit. So your start to the industry was in Southern California, and you were working at a hotel as a bellhop.
That's right.
And it gave you the opportunity to produce all-age shows in the ballrooms.
Yes.
So you were concert promoter bellhop.
Yes.
What the fuck, dude?
I know. It was rad, huh? So I'm playing in ska bands, and there's no place for ska bands to play other than 21 and over bars, and that's impossible. But I'm still like doing it.
So are you
Anaheim.
a rude boy? Or were you?
I'm a Rudy. Yeah.
Pick it up, pick it up.
See, Rodney King riots happen. Nobody wants to come to Orange County. All the tours cancel. All the conventions cancel. Job's daughter cancels. All of the main events cancel. All these hotel ballrooms are empty. At the time, Orange County is very conservative. It's still very John Birch. And the only places that you can do all ages music are places where they have weddings and things like that. All these hotel
before House of
ballrooms.
Blues, Anaheim, or
Right.
everything.
Pre-House of Blues. So I get in and I go to some of the people at the hotels and I'm like, hey man, your hotel ballroom's empty. What are you guys doing 2 months from now? I want to throw a party in there. You guys can keep the bar and I'll rent the place out. Cause I'm a kid. I'm an idiot. I don't know that like the bars where like all the real money is, but I grew up with Tony Canal from No Doubt and I knew the guys from Real Big Fish and I'd been managing Real Big Fish for a while and I knew the guys in Sublime and I knew the guys in Offspring. So we started putting on these concerts and I did it first because the space was there. Second, because I wanted my band to play there. And third, because it was a lot of fun. And then when I started realizing I could make money with the thing, it was awesome. Like the first show that I did, I made $1,500 and I bought a Super Nintendo and I bought SimCity and I bought a TV and I bought a bunch of groceries. And then I just started promoting concerts and I learned how to do it. And I put together No Doubt's biggest concert at the time, which was at the Inn at the Park in Anaheim. And that was awesome. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't rent a barricade. And so I had to pay all of the money that we made on the show back to the hotel because it blew out the back wall of the hotel ballroom.
Oh, wow.
So I just kept doing it. And eventually the guy who ran the first hotel that I worked at, he said, Sean, either you have to do one or the other. Either you're going to get fired and you can keep doing shows, or you go back to being a bellman and that's great and you can't do shows anymore. One of the two, because everybody's giving me shit and you're getting extra treatment and it's not cool. And like 2 days beforehand, I'd sent $1,000 to William Morris as a deposit for Thelonious Monster. So that was an easy solution. I'm like, I guess I'm just going to be a concert promoter.
Don't you think your boss would have let you do the last show?
I didn't even think about it. No.
It's like, hey, I got this deposit out. Is it cool if I just get this last one off? And that bellhop job must have been really charity.
Dude, the bellhop job was rad. You got between $150 and $200 a day in cash. It was totally great. I got to take all my friends to Angelo's and we would get chili fries and vanilla Dr. Pepper. And then we could go to the video arcade and like sometimes we could go to an Angel game. And that was the shit. It was great. I was a hero when I was 19 years old and it was beautiful. So then I'm like, oh, Jesus, I guess I'm doing shows full time. And then I got hired by House of Blues. House of Blues heard about what I was doing and I got hired by House of Blues to be the assistant to start out. So
at Kevin Morrow's house.
Kevin Morrow. He was from Orange County.
Fellow ska guy, Falcon Morrow.
Yeah, and he took pity on me being from Orange County. So I was still going to Cal State Fullerton. I was in my last semester.
But if anybody remembers Falcon Morrow, like, send me an email.
Phelan Coochie.
We'll send you a Promoter
Phelan
101 sticker.
Coochie, Charlie Musselwhite, 5 Blind Boys of Alabama. That man taught me so much about music.
You remember that Michael Wood and Elise Rogers was an agent?
Yeah, Elise Rogers. Elise Rogers was the one who got me in the door. Yeah. So I have 3 classes left at Cal State Fullerton, and I go to all 3 teachers and I say, hey, I love going to school, but I can't go to school anymore. You know, I've got the job. I was majoring in communication, so I wanted to do this anyway. Oh, really? Where are you going to work? House of Blues. Oh, that place is nice. What shows are coming up? So one teacher wanted James Brown tickets. One teacher wanted Junior Walker and the All-Stars, and one teacher wanted Eric Clapton tickets. And I bribed all 3 teachers with concert tickets in order to get through and graduate.
So you got the diploma?
I got the diploma, but I missed the graduation because I was also playing horns in Dance Hall Crashers, and we were playing in Hawaii. So my parents didn't believe me, and they're like, why didn't you graduate? And then the diploma came in the mail like 2 months later.
Well, even if you had gone through graduation and walked, you still wouldn't have gotten the diploma that day. It still would have come out. That's how they do
So
that.
it didn't matter.
I didn't realize you played horns in DHC.
Yeah, I did live stuff with them. I played horns for the Aquabats. I was on the first Aquabats record, and I've played in...
What was your instrument? Which horn?
Trombone.
Nice.
And I played for Maldita Vecindad on one of their records. I played for Fermin Muguruza on one of their records.
Must have some chops if you were playing with DHC and all these other acts.
Yeah. Did a lot of studies for it. But, I mean, one of the interesting things was DHC was about to go out on the Lockjaw tour. And I was...
Great album.
Yeah.
Give me a pack of them GPC.
Really, really good record. I decided to stay back and work at House of Blues instead. That's kind of when, because I mean, as a trombone player, you're not going to get gigs. I mean, you can get gigs, but joining a union, it's impossible. As a trombone
you're talking about
player.
guys that have been playing for 70 years that are still in the union because they live off of those gigs.
Right. And your embouchure stays your embouchure, how you play stays that way until you're like 70, 80 years old. So, you know, I was never going to be able to get like long-term amount of gigs. I mean, I still play gigs here and there, but...
Do you?
Yeah.
Dance Hall Crasher reunion?
No, I don't know. You got to talk to Elise and Karina about that. But I still play every once in a while in shows, and I love the idea of being on stage because I think sometimes if you're in one part of the business only, you can tend to think of the world only through that prism. I'm glad that I was a promoter. I'm glad that I ran venues. I'm glad that I was an agent. I'm glad I was a manager because it allows me to look at things from all different perspectives. And that's the toughest thing in our business, that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we're going to be talking about stuff 20 years from now, the same way we were just now talking about things that happened 20 years ago. So how do we keep our minds fresh? Because we're pretty much doing the same thing, putting the holds, booking the dates, confirming the thing, making the ad mat, sending it out, getting the advances. What we do inherently as agents can be perceived as very rote, but what we do as individuals is up to us. And that's one of the things I really like about having as wide of a roster, that it allows me to continually think of new things and new strategies, and use a strategy that works for a K-pop band and use it with Public Enemy or Run DMC, and trying to cross over how you make things work in the same way. If you're running, you know, the Mesa Pavilion, or if you're running Levitt in Denver, you're able to see what permutations happen in a Latin show or in a hippie show or in a country show, and how you can utilize that into other places. If you just do the same genre over and over, you're going to go crazy.
Well, and there are people that have definitely specialized that have learned to do the best of all worlds.
Right.
So, I mean, you got the guys that do country, and it's such a big genre. That's enough to fill their entire day and their entire year. Being diversified, being able to have lots of conversations with lots of people is a fun thing for a promoter and for most agents. So, and let's talk about that. You're at APA.
Correct.
We could have done the tour through you were with the agency group, and like, you've been a promoter, you've been an agent, you've done it. Let's talk about the current day. You're in a hallway with some of the best agents in the world. Andy Summers, Bruce Solar, Guy Richards, Jamie Kelso is there. I mean, you go through that hallway of who is just there. It's like, AJ is amazing. You got Dixon there. It's just like Craig Newman is there. It's just an amazing hallway of people. Humiston, all of these great things. Guy Richards, who is probably, by the book, the best agent by the definition of a good agent that there is.
He's the machine.
Your office is, 2 doors from him? Like, you can just go down there and see how it's done by the book. And everybody's got a little different style. It's like Noelle is going to have a different vibe than you're going to have. And it's just like, and you're dealing with different people. She's dealing with the arts world, which is a little more kindler, gentler thing. Whereas if you were talking to me, you could tell me to go get fucked in like a very funny, friendly way, and it wouldn't affect the conversation at all. You could see all of those different vibes and pick out what works for you. The resource of being at that hallway, it's like, just Murderer's Row. How fucking cool is that?
Having the energy of all these people rowing in the same direction is phenomenal. And each person having their own viewpoints and their own historical perspectives, it's amazing. Like, Guy is a machine. That guy's been through so many things. And
yeah, he's a thesaurus and an encyclopedia of the industry. Anything you want to know, you go to him and he will explain it.
Yeah. I remember once when I was an independent promoter, I was a middle buyer for a venue.
Middle buyer, you mean you were doing buy sells?
I was doing buy sells, and a guy was about to stiff Guy. And I was the contact for Guy, and I couldn't let that happen. And it was like, it wasn't that much money. It was like 10 grand. And at the time, I didn't have that much money, but I wrote the check myself for 10 grand because I knew, A, Guy's a machine. He's going to remember this forever. B, I'm not going to be the guy to do that. I'm not going to be the person to let the thing go down in flames. So I wrote the check, and, you know, I didn't think poorly about it. I just knew, okay, if this is the type of people I'm going to work with, that honor is everything, then you have to be honorable. And thankful that that was instilled in me in an early age, that, you know, if you're going to ride with it, then you're going to die with it.
And the venue didn't make good on it. You want to be in
it?
The
venue didn't make good on it, but I hope that I would be doing this 20 years from now and 20 years after that to build with that, the word being your honor. And to have that many people on one team, all with different perspectives, but all kind of based within the theory of just following excellence. It's pretty awesome.
So you've got a row of assistants outside that row of agents' offices.
Mm-hmm.
The cubicles match up. If you haven't been to APA LA, it's like any other major agency. There's offices with windows, and on the outside of the inside of the offices, there's a row of cubicles that pretty much mirror the agent's office that they're assistant for.
They're facing the agent that they're working with, so they can give nonverbal cues all the time. However, nowadays, everybody just uses WhatsApp, and so
right,
that's
like
how they contact.
Max is not exactly able to see Andy the way his office is set up, but he can send messages and pop his head in there. They're super close. So
right.
You've got a mirror image of all the agents with their assistants, and you can see the guys that are going to be the future agents and the big swinging dicks of this business. Because you've had that view for so long and you know the business so well, can you tell who the next guy is going to be when you're looking at the agent? Who's going to be the agent, the assistant that's going to break?
Yeah, I can tell the people that I trust in. Anytime somebody wants to work with me, I ask them to write a 5-page paper about the future of the music business for the next 18 months. And I tell them to give me that report by a certain point. I'll make a certain time period, like usually 5 days from then at like 9 a.m. And you would be amazed how few people do that. Or they'll go, wait, what? And then I just go, oh, nothing, never mind. Nice to meet you. And, you know, never again.
They're willing to do the work.
Right. Who wants to be something in this world? How many people are there in the United States? 320 million? How difficult is it to make impact in a business where there are mega agents, where there are mega promoters, where there are mega banks, where there is a mammoth amount of information coming and going? How do you find out which people want to break through, which people want to be good, which people want to make something greater? So one thing that I always do if somebody wants to work with me, I just go, you know what? That's great. I appreciate that. Please put together a 5-page paper about what you think the future of the music business is going to be in the next 18 months. Or, you know, a couple of people I've asked, make me a mixtape. And I see what they do and I see where they're at, because it's really about their thought process. Anybody can remember, 8 times 8 is 64. It's 300 miles between city A and city B. That stuff's easy to do. What's hard is to find somebody who's able to think in a way that is going to change minds, that is going to be able to understand larger concepts, and more importantly, that loves the idea of learning, that loves the idea of wanting to find the next equation. Because that's what all of our business is. One of the reasons why I love wrestling, and one of the reasons, the big reason I think you like wrestling, is because it's very repetitive and it's very primal, but it is a dance. And the difference between paying attention to Roman Reigns or CM Punk or AJ Styles are these minor, tiny little things that make people care and make people buy their t-shirt versus, they don't care at all and they have to put them in a tag team or something like that. To be able to see that precision, that focus over and over and over, and to be able to see a company like New Japan Pro Wrestling, like WWE, be able to present something over and over and over, knowing full well anybody can see it online. Mephisto's not coming out. They're not bringing up the dead. This is something that is very repetitive. Why do people keep going? Why is it? Why do people buy
entertainment?
Right. Why do people buy Bibles for other people on their first communion or when they graduate? Why do people do that? Because they believe in what's within the scripture so much that they want other people to love it.
Same reason you buy a CD you love for a friend.
Right.
You want to turn them on.
The best bands in the world are religions, where people just get into it and they'll buy a t-shirt even though they've got shirts, even though they've already got one shirt of the band, but they're going to buy this shirt. They're going to buy another New Japan Pro Wrestling shirt, even though they've already got a bunch. They already got the Kenny Omega one, but they're going to buy the Golden Lovers one. Why is that? Why do people care? In a time period where it's never been more difficult to keep a job, it's never been more films, more movies out there, it's never been more difficult to go to and from your job. In a time period where there's so much external pressure, why do people care? And that's what I love about wrestling, because I can sit there and I can watch and go, look at all these people converted to this religion. This is beautiful.
What I love about wrestling is the 80s managers that get to be a smartass. I always thought it'd be great to be paid.
Who's your favorite?
Who's your favorite? People. I wanted to be Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or classy Freddie Blassie is really who I really wanted to emulate, right?
He was great.
It's just like, where's the podcast come from? It comes from me wanting to be a bad guy wrestling manager from the 80s so bad. I wanted to be Precious Paul Ellering, It's like I wanted to go antagonize something and then run behind the big guy to protect it.
Right, like Paul Heyman.
Promoter 101, I can't think of a better way than figuring out what we like about wrestling, but tips and emulation that we got from you. Emulation? Is that a word? Anyway, Emulation. I'm emulating myself right now. Thank you so much, John. I can't thank you enough for doing the podcast.
Brother. Thank you for giving me time. Appreciate it.
John's in a career transition. We wish him the best, and I have a feeling there's some big news that's about to be announced.
Hi, it's John Meglin from Concerts West, and you're on Promoter 101.
Hey, it's time to celebrate birthdays for the week of November 16th to the 22nd, 2018.
Friday, November 16th, Hillary Zuckerberg, Michael Jaworski, Kendall Moffitt, Jason Rio, Andrew Lenoy.
Saturday, that's 11/17, Sarah Peltz, Sean Healy, and the one and only Tyler Grill.
Sunday, 11/18, Tom Ross and Josh Potty.
Monday, November 19th, Adam Zaks, Steve Guest, Matthew Smith, and Bill Ward.
Tuesday, 11/20, Robin Spielberg and Justin Levy from Mills Entertainment.
Wednesday, 11/21, Deborah Ferguson, Rick DeVoe, Chad Ivey, and David Zedek.
Thursday, 11/22, Jason Mistrine, Craig Bruck, Tammy Bryant, and Duffy McSwiggan.
Happy birthday from, all of us.
Hey there, this is Seth Hurwitz. I am one of the last independent promoters and proud of it, and you are listening to Promoter 101.
The quote of the week comes to us from Bruce Springsteen. I think you have everything you need by the time you're 18 to do interesting writing, maybe even by 12. Very deep.
Episode 109 is in the books of the Promoter 101 podcast. Thanks for having us, Dan.
Feel free to write us at steiny@promoter101.net if you've got anything to say, some feedback. If you'd like to date Ant, his wife might have something to say about that. And if you'd like to employ Jeff, I think, Eventbrite might have something to say about that. But hey, reach out to both of them through us, no problem.
Next week, we are all new for episode 110 of the Promoter 101 podcast, as we will air the Billboard Live keynote with Steiny and activists Bernie Cahill in its entirety. We will be posting that early Wednesday, so you'll have something to listen to for your holiday travel.
Such a good interview.
Until then, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. A big thanks to our special guest from Lyte Antony Taylor and Eventbrite's Jeff White.
Cheers.
John Valentino with AEG Presents, and here we are on Promoter 101.